All right, this person, Staraptor Flock, wants to debate on whether or not Trump is a fascist. Let's bring him in. Staraptor Flock, what's up? How you doing? Staraptor Flock, how you doing?
Doing good. So,
Hello. Wait, hold on. Okay, really quickly, I want to ask you a question.
yes.
Uh, are you a Trump supporter?
Uh, I would regard myself as one, yeah.
Okay, cool. Talk again.
Uh, all right. So,
Are they quiet or loud? I'm just asking chat right now. Do they sound too quiet, too loud? Can you hear them just fine? Are they good? How's their audio? I'm just adjusting your audio in Discord. Is it good? Chat? Fine? Okay, cool. All right, Straptor Flock. What's the bit too quiet? I'll turn you up a little bit. All right, Straptor Flock. What is your contention?
all right. So, a while back we had this debate on this topic,
Oh,
and
we've
you
debated
presented
before.
me, yeah, and you presented me with the Earth fascism essay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess I'll get to the point and explain why my problem the with Earth fascism.
Okay.
Specifically the 14 point section.
Mm-hmm.
So, so if we look at the paragraph before the 14 points begins, it says, in spite of this fuzziness, I think it's possible to outline a list of features that are typical of what I would like to call Earth fascism or eternal fascism. These features cannot be organized into a system. Many of them contradict each other and are also typical of other kinds of despotism or fantasism. But it is
Wait,
enough.
really quickly. Could you put your Discord on Do Not Disturb really quick? Because I can hear you getting pinged.
Uh,
Yeah, I can hear a little boop boop from Discord in the
give
background.
me a second.
Yeah. You just click on the little color next to your name, the little dot, and you want to turn it from green to red.
All right. So, where was I? These features cannot. All right. Uh, where was it? Okay. These features cannot be organized into a system, but many of them contradict each other and are also typical of other kinds of despotism or fantasism. It is enough that one of them be present in order to allow fascism to congregate around it.
Mm-hmm.
So, due to the because so if we go over to point eight,
Mm-hmm.
8.8 of the
Hold on,
14
wait.
points.
So what was the point of reading that before? Let's keep it in segments. Let's go at it one at a time, okay? What was your point of reading that off before?
Uh, so I think one of the reasons why the 14 points is flawed is that Marxism could be placed like you could call Marxism fascist if
No,
you were
you
to
couldn't.
well, that's what I'm explaining.
So what you seem to be misunderstanding here, going off of what you just read off to me, is the fact that and Umberto Eco makes this very clear in like right before the points start, is that fascism is an incoherent ideology. It's not an ideology that makes sense. It's extremely contradictory. One of the best examples of this is that simultaneously the enemy must be very strong and overwhelming and a danger to your way of life and the cultural integrity of your nation, while also weak and easy to destroy. As to rile up the population. Like, these are contradicting ideas, right? Very common with Trump, how he talks about how the left are weak little soy boys, but also this overwhelming evil cabal that want to destroy him, right? So this is
I'll make it
already
clear.
one example of Trump. So you seem to be misunderstanding that fascism isn't an ideology that makes sense. It's incoherent. That seems to be where you're having like a block here, because you're reading these points and you're like, well, these don't make any sense. And yes, because fascism doesn't make sense.
Ah, but so I'll talk about this later, but I will say that I think that Umberto Eco seems to picture fascism as sort of a mental disease, I mean, sort of what you stated before, but I believe that fascism should be. I don't think fascism should be seen like. Have you ever seen Death Battle, the Death Battle series made by Screw Attack?
No, I haven't.
That's gonna be hard to describe.
Maybe find another like example. Maybe something
Uh,
I've seen.
Maybe I could describe it to you. Maybe. So that maybe that's too complicated to explain it, but he's so Umberto Eco wants to. I don't think it's possible to mold all types of fascism together into one thing. I think you have to look at like where's the ABC? Where's the letters example earlier on? Well, let's stick to the point that I was gonna state before.
So
The ABC, the letters part. So in
so hold on, wait, really quickly. I want to. Okay, I think I'm understanding where the disconnect is here. Okay, so the problem is fascism isn't like leftism or liberalism or any other kind of ideology that has a strong framework and idea. Fascism is like a what's a good way to describe this? How about the you ever play World of Warcraft? I'll do a pop culture reference for this.
no.
You haven't. Okay. Um, how about Halo? You ever play Halo?
No.
No? Okay. Shit. All right. Well, I'm going to explain it anyway. So, fascism isn't a coherent ideology, as in, there is no pioneer of fascism that set about very strict rules for what fascism is. You've got fascist thinkers and people who have propped up fascism, but fascism always seems to rear its ugly head in a different way depending on where it's being brought about, who's bringing it about, and who the assigned enemy of the people is. Because fascism always comes about when there's a group of people or groups of people that are meant to be the enemy. That's why a list of points that are common or almost always there when talking about fascists is more useful than a single definition. Because if you try to pigeonhole the definition of fascism, fascism becomes impossible to identify, because then fascists can just dog whistle their true beliefs to try to avoid falling into that definition by going, well, actually, and then thus harder to fight, because fascism, I would hope you agree, is bad. I would assume you agree with that because you're coming on to defend Trump by saying he is not a fascist. So if we go over these 14 points, these are all consistent for the most part with every fascist regime, and Trump seems to be consistent with these as well.
Ah. Now, let's. I want to. All right. So Trump would be using the 14 points. You could describe Trump as a eternal fascist. That is true. However, you could also describe Marxists as fascists by if we go
How
to
so?
I believe it point eight. It's actually the point that you mentioned earlier about
The
that
strong and the
states
weak. Yeah, the enemy being strong and weak, yes.
can that
How is
not be
that?
can that not be applied to the bourgeoisie? How they are so this strong, powerful force, but at the same time, the proletariat can just tear them down.
I don't think there's anything about Marxism that says that the proletariat is strong and also weak. I know I've read plenty of Marx. The idea behind Marx is that you've got a group of people who are privileged in the sense that they own the means of production through exploitation. I'm not sure how aware you are of Marxist ideology. The idea is if you don't work, you die, right? You may be able to completely physically overpower your boss. You could go to your work right now, punch your boss in the face, and probably shove a stapler up his ass and send him to the ER. Easy. You could probably overpower your boss if you caught him by surprise. Problem is, then you're going to get fired, maybe arrested, most likely arrested, but at the very least fired, and then boom, if you don't find another job, you can't afford food, you can't take care of yourself. So the issue here isn't that the enemy is physically or culturally strong and weak. The idea is that while the bourgeoisie ruling class, at least at the time of Marx, was not physically strong enough to withhold a revolution of people, and it obviously, wasn't. I mean, there have been plenty of revolutions back in Marx's time and before. However, the reason why the bourgeoisie is so strong is because they hold the capital. They hold the means of production. They hold the means for people to be able to live and take care of themselves. So the working class is held in an ultimatum of work or die. produce a product for me to benefit from or die. I
I
don't
get
think that's near. I don't think that's even close to the idea that like the Jews are simultaneously this quivering, weak group that we can destroy, but also this evil parasite that's feeding off of us that will destroy Western civilization. Don't even think that's close.
well. Hmm, uh, I mean, it's it seems like the Marx believed that the proletariat had the strength to take down the bourgeoisie since they're greater in numbers.
Um, no, the idea. So the idea behind Marxian. So Marx believed in two different ways of changing things. A lot of tankies will disagree with this, but I don't care. Tankies are fucking idiots. Marx did believe that electoralism, like going through the system to try to improve things and make the living conditions and the means of the working class better, he believed in that if that was the only opportunity. But he also agreed that if it's possible, revolution can happen because the bourgeoisie or the proletariat is more numerous and by numbers at least more powerful than the bourgeoisie, of course. However, he never claimed that the bourgeoisie was more powerful than the proletariat or stronger than the proletariat. Never once. The only argument is that the bourgeoisie has the means of production, they own it, and the proletariat do not. That's not a power thing. That's more so a who owns the thing and who doesn't, which you could argue is an extension of power, but not in the same way that fascists do when they talk about like the Jews or black people or the gays or whatever newfangled version of fascism is hip and cool right now. You know.
Okay, so I suppose I'll give you the W on this particular section because I should look into Marx a little bit more. However, there's another contention that I have with uh the another section that I had a problem with in fascism. So I believe it was point 12
Okay.
since both
Machismo and weaponry.
yeah. So if we were to read point 12, it would be possible for someone who's left-leaning who just so happens to like weaponry and is a sexist. It would be possible for them to be considered a fascist, would it not be under these 14 points? Under the
So let's go ahead and read this really quickly. This is point 12. This is what you're saying is like consistent with the left sometimes. Machismo and weaponry. Machismo implies both disdain for women and intolerance and condemnation of non-standard sexual habits from Christianity or chastity to homosexuality. Does this sound like the left to you? Plenty of people on the left are pro-gun, mostly for self-defense. I'm pro-gun for self-defense. I want to have a pistol just in case someone tries to break into my house. But that's more so out of the need to have one in order to defend myself because I'd argue that in the grand scheme of things, I'm probably at more likelihood to be attacked than like the average person because I'm like a public figure and all that. The left isn't a very big fan of machismo. If you look at the left, there's a lot of femboys and cat boys who want to have their little buttholes go boop or whatever.
Can I emphasize something real
Like,
quick?
yeah, this doesn't even come close.
I want to emphasize that this isn't. I'm saying that this could happen, not that it is happening.
Sure. And if I was to come on, do you think if I was to come on and point to one example of these points where that applied to Trump, like kind of, do you think I would come out of that debate looking very good if I was trying to prove Trump was a fascist and only one of these
No, no,
points
no,
kind
no.
of applied to Trump?
No, I'm saying that hypothetically, if there's someone who's left-leaning, who likes weaponry and is sexist, why should they be considered a fascist? I don't think they should be considered a fascist.
One part of fascism applies to them. Generally, it's if it was just one point of fascism applies to them, I just call them a chud. I wouldn't call them a fascist because
But you see, let's
fascism
go back.
typically involves a lot of these,
At
or at
least
least a good amount of them.
let's run it back. Let's run it back to the paragraph before the 14 points begins. Before the 14 points begins, Umberto Eco emphasizes that It if we look at the last sentence of the paragraph before point one, it says, "But is enough that one of them be present to allow fascism to congregate around it."
Coagulate.
Yeah.
Do you know what this sentence means?
That you only need one. You only need
So
to 1 point in order for fascism. Only 1 point has to apply in order for fascism to appear within it.
So, no. Let me tell you what this sentence means. All right. So let's say one of these points on here is racism and being anti like racism, right? Discrimination. So if you are racist, right, that's all you are. You're okay with gay people, you know. You don't even care about guns. You're just racist. You're not a big fan of like I don't know. Let's say Mexicans, right? And then a certain orange fascist comes along and says, when Mexico sends their people, they're sending murderers and rapists and criminals, and some of them, I assume, are good people, but we're going to build a big wall, then you're more likely to fall in line with said fascist. Same goes for people in the Weimar Republic or in Germany whenever, the Nazis were gaining power. If you felt as though you were disenfranchised by a particular group of people, the Jews, in the case of the Nazis, in case you'll remember, then you're more likely to fall in with Hitler's regime and the advocacy of the Nazi Party to put all the Jews and other degenerates, as they call them, into ghettos and then eventually ship them off to concentration camps to be murdered in mass through a genocide. You're probably more likely to fall in line with that. If you've got a very strong conviction on one of these points, you're much less likely to oppose fascism, and you're much more likely to fall further into fascism and start agreeing with these opinions if you already agree with one of them. How many people do you know that are sexist and big on guns that aren't also that don't also have contempt for the weak, or believe that in like selective populism that like the establishment is bad, but leftism, which is also anti-establishment, is bad, or fear of difference, people that don't like change, or disagreement is treason, that if you disagree with Trump, then it's treason, or you're anti-American. Like, how many people do you know that fall into one of these things but don't eventually or already agree with more? That's the point. That's what that sentence is saying. If you agree with one of these things, chances are you're going to agree with more, or you're going to end up agreeing with more. Or if you have a leader in power that agrees with all of these things, then you're more likely to agree with that leader and follow them. That's what he means when he says but it is enough that one of them be present to allow fascism to coagulate around it. And to coagulate is like to envelop or to grow on. Like algae on a piece of wood on a dock in the water.
But even even then, Marxism would still fall into that criteria.
Because Marxists
I mean,
believe
not Marx. Excuse
that
me. It would someone who is a leftist who just so happens to be sexist and likes weaponry.
there are no leftist sexists. There are people who are sexist that may call themselves leftists, but they're about as leftist as the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea is democratic in a People's Republic. What people call themselves doesn't really matter. It's what they believe that matters. So if someone is
Okay.
sexist, that like one of the core tenets of leftism is equality, equality above all else. Hating women doesn't really sound like obviously if you hate a group, you probably think less of them. That's not a very leftist value. Just like I don't think tankies are leftists because tankies believe in hierarchy, and leftism is inherently opposed to hierarchy.
All right. So let's say we got a guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a sexist and he likes weaponry, but he wants Medicare for all. He wants all these other leftist policies. Would you call him? Would you call him so? Would you consider him right leaning or left leaning?
Probably right-leaning. We have a term for these people called Nazguls, people who are economically progressive but socially very conservative, or even like full-on like
Wait,
fascistic.
give me
Actually, number 13 is perfect for this. That's selective populism. It's on the list. That would just be selective populism. It's a core tenet of fascism. The idea that social welfare for like the like a good example of this would be like in America would be those that believe in like welfare and job opportunities and like more left leaning economic policy, but only for white people, not for like brown people or Jewish people or gay people. They want them out because like socially speaking, they would want another Holocaust, but they're cool with free healthcare and all that. As long as it's for the white straight people.
Oh wait, let's just say that this person is black, and I don't know. Let's just say this person.
There are black fascists. You heard of the Black Hammer organization? They're actual black
I've heard of them.
Nazis. They
They are.
hate Anne Frank. They believe the Nazis were good. Yeah, there's black fat. Hey, Jesse Lee Peterson he calls himself an Oreo cookie because he's black on the outside, white on the inside, and he believes black people are inherently immoral and white people are inherently moral and need to show them the way. Race has nothing to do with it except for who you hate. If you hate a certain race, then you're racist. If you're part of a certain race and you hate a certain race, even if you're part of it, you're racist. Simple as that.
All
I
right.
don't like that kind of identity politics where like
I know
your race or your identity defines who you are.
I know this hypothetical person is one in a million, but let's say we have someone who's not racist, who's sexist, who likes who likes weaponry and supports a bunch of other social and economic leftist policies. Would you consider them to be right leaning or left leaning?
That they're social. So let's just broaden it a little bit more. So they're socially right leaning but economically left leaning.
No, they're socially left leaning except for being sexist and yeah, except for
But they're
being
just sexist. I'd consider that to be like a right libertarian. So they'd be right leaning. They'd be in like the yellow square on the, I believe the bottom right of the political compass.
You
For
think
like a libertarian.
sexism alone can just sexism alone if they're left leaning on every single other leftist issue, but if they're sexist alone, that puts them to the right.
And they like weaponry. Yeah, I mean that's generally pretty consistent with
Yeah.
libertarians. Libertarians, at least a lot of libertarians I know, tend not to be like big fans of women, and they love their guns, and they're generally pretty progressive on some issues, but also not on others. They just want their weed and their guns, and they don't care. Like, yeah, it sounds like a libertarian to me what you're describing. And no, I don't think right wing libertarians are fascists.
Uh, let's just say that I don't know. Marx is a sexist. Is he all of a sudden leaning now?
It sort of depends on the time, right? Like, so if it was 100 years ago and he was like what we would today consider sexist, probably not. No. If he was what was at the time considered to be pretty sexist by most people, then maybe. Then Marx lived what he wrote a letter to Abraham Lincoln, so hundreds of years ago. Like what 150, 200, when did Marx die? Hundreds of years ago. If he was more or less in line on social issues as people were back then I wouldn't really consider that to be like fascistic or right leaning because we consider political movements based on the contemporary beliefs of people at the time, right? So, for example, if you took a guy from the 20s and dropped him in today, his beliefs, if he was like considered even like progressive or just like centrist back then, he would be considered like right or possibly even far right now, potentially.
What if Marx? So if
By the way,
Marx
I
came
don't
out
think
of a
Marx
time
himself is
machine,
perfect. I don't even think that Marx himself is perfect, by the way. I think he had some pretty good ideas when it came to economic stuff. I don't like write my entire ideology around Marx. I figure out what I believe, I do my own research, and I build my ideology around what I agree with. I don't base my political ideology or my convictions around a single person. I find that to be extremely like destructive and parasocial, and I see a lot of people do that. I see a lot of people, especially tankies, who I guess they do it because it makes them feel more fulfilled, maybe. Like build their entire political identity around being a Marxist because they love Marx or a Leninist because they love Lenin. I think that's very harmful, and I think the right does it too, particularly with Trump. Like I'm a Trump supporter. I love Trump. I'm a patriot.
yeah. Okay, I know this hypothetical is getting a little extreme, but if Marx came out of a time machine and he just so happened to be sexist, would that automatically make him someone who is right leaning?
Compared to today, yeah, probably. On social issues, definitely. Yeah, if you took him into a time machine today, you'd be like, oh, wow, that Marx guy is not a big fan of women. He thinks that women shouldn't be allowed to work, which I don't believe he thought that women weren't allowed to work. I don't think so. Oh, wow, he believes women shouldn't be allowed to work and that women shouldn't be able to, like, own property. Whew, that's pretty yikes, you know? Like, damn, it's kind of a shitty belief. I'm pretty sure that's how most people would react. Yeah.
Do you have to believe that in order to be considered, I guess, machismo? What is it? Where is it?
So when it talks about machismo and weaponry, I think Trump is a really good example of this, right? The idea is that you ever heard of like
Well,
brutalism as a concept?
let's keep the focus on if if would the, would that would be considered machismo? Would how sexist do you have to be in order to be machismo? Considered machismo? I'm not too familiar, the most
So
familiar with the term, but just
really quickly, let's work out our definitions really quick.
I'll
Machismo is
just
strong or aggressive masculine pride. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm a dude and I like to listen. I'm a dude. I like to drink my beer. I like to smoke cigars and I like to cut down trees and go out hunting. You know, like that wouldn't necessarily be considered machismo. Machismo would be like the asshole at the gym who like doesn't re-rack his weights at the gym. You know, the guy who like goes out of his way to set the weights to be like too fucking high whenever he finish. Like there are dudes who do this. If you've ever gone to the gym, where they'll like use a machine, like one of the things to do like a set, you know, and then they'll like look around, make sure no one's looking, and they'll switch the little bar to make it so that there's like an extra 50 pounds of weight on there to make so that then when the next person comes by after they get off the machine, makes it look like they were doing reps of like 50-pound heavier reps. You know, that would be an instance of machismo, and those people are assholes, and I want to like fucking vaporize every one of them in a video game. But that would be an example of machismo, being like, what are you, fucking woman? That would be an example of machismo. Trump does this all the time. Trump tries to like besmirch the masculinity of others all the fucking time. Have you seen the Sam Cedar Steven Crowder thing? When Steven Crowder is like, I've never met more of a woman. Shit like that. That's an example of machismo. Over the top, aggressive, or egregious masculinity.
so you think machismo alone can make you right leaning?
It's an aspect of being right leaning. If you go as far as to hate women, yeah, it's definitely a right leaning thing. Yeah, right wing people tend to be anti women's rights and liberation. Yeah.
Well, so you
Listen,
say
it's not my fault the right hates women. I don't know what to say.
so you say that would automatically make someone right leaning?
If they hated women, yeah, that would be a right leaning characteristic. Yeah.
I know I'm asking this again, but even if every other aspect of them is left leaning, them being sexist alone can make them right leaning.
If we imagine left and right on a scale, then the guy who believes all the left leaning things and doesn't hate women would be more left leaning by some completely arbitrary increment than the guy who believes in all the same stuff but hates women. They would be more right leaning than that person who doesn't hate women and believes all the other things. Yes.
All right, I guess on this topic we can't necessarily see eye to eye on this one, so I guess I'll move on to another point.
Okay.
Uh, I think it was point 11.
Oh, you got really loud there for a second. What the hell?
Huh?
Sorry, I had to cough.
Oh wait, do you consider the Soviet Union to be fascist?
In some respects, definitely. They did this. They did like the both men and women do their part to hold up the sky thing, and they have like the statues of like the man and the woman worker like holding up like whatever. Like they've had stuff like that, but I'd say overall the strong agreement with hierarchy and whatnot. Like the Soviet Union definitely went pretty hard on some of those points, being fascist. I'd be more comfortable calling it fascist than I'd be comfortable calling it leftist myself. I'm not a big fan of the Soviet Union.
All right. So if that's the case, then I guess my next argument wouldn't apply. So uh,
Yeah, if you talk to a tanky, if you ever debate a tanky, that's a point you want to bring up. Yeah, but I'm not a tanky. I don't like the Soviet Union. I don't like North Korea. I don't like China, and so on.
so all right. So I guess we can't necessarily. I guess I'll just tell you what I planned on doing because I think we can't really. It's we're kind of at a gridlock currently with the whole sexist thing, whether that makes you right leaning. So I guess I'll tell you what I planned on doing. So if per se, so personally, I don't think that if you're sexist, being sexist alone can make you right leaning.
Mm-hmm.
So if that were the case, then uh Umberto Eco's 14 points would not work if if that were the case. So,
Well, machismo doesn't just mean being sexist.
well,
Because everyone's a little sexist, to be fair. You know, like everybody kind of like, you know, even if you're all about like rights for women and everything, and you're not a traditionalist, you could probably still be like, God, my wife, she fucking nags me all day and squawks at me to do this and that. God, I fucking hate it. God, women, am I right? You know, like that's a little bit sexist to believe or say, but I think we're all there sometimes. You know what I mean? Doesn't
even
mean
if
you're against women's rights.
even in the most extreme case, if you're the most extreme sexism, if you're that and left leaning on everything else, personally, I think you should be still considered to be left leaning. But I guess we can't see eye on that. But
Well,
if
there's a difference between left leaning and being leftist. You know?
leftist, I think you would still
Mm-hmm.
be considered a leftist if you were just if you're a sexist,
What do you?
but
Oh,
you're
thank you
left
for being
leaning
here,
on.
person. What do
If
you
you're,
think? What do you think leftism means?
it means uh uh I would sock them be considered leftists. Or
Borderline. Like it depends on who you ask, but I'd consider sock dems to
sock
be like
them.
basically the problem is so here's the difference between well maybe not so the idea behind leftism, the difference between leftism and liberalism as an ideology as it's considered today is basically an ideology based on the principles of the Enlightenment, the idea that you know like free trade, self-determinism, just libertarian values in general, capitalism and so on, but more socially progressive, right? While leftism tends to be anti-hierarchy, tends to be anti-capitalism a lot of the time, workers owning the means of production, very, very progressive socially. And more in favor of the general population having power equally spread among it, rather than there being a hierarchy of certain people who were more or less born to be where they are. You know, people like know people who were like born into riches and they grow up and they inherit a company, and so now they're a multi-billionaire and now they're on the top of everybody because they were born that way. That's part of the hierarchy that liberalism tends to be okay with, but leftism tends not to be.
Um, Mostly on the point. Yeah. I mean, we have to look at. I mean, the origins of left and right, they come from the French Revolution. How they it's tradition versus progressivism. So basically what you said,
Yeah.
pretty much. So
Traditionalism versus progressivism, and broadly speaking.
so I guess I'll go back to what I was planning on doing. If you were to say that sex if you would still be considered left-leaning if you were sexist but believed in many other left-leaning principles. So,
You'd be more right leaning, yeah, because of that. You'd be more right leaning than a leftist who wasn't sexist, yes.
so if you were to say that you would be considered left-leaning, then what I would go on to say would be that Umberto Eco's essay, I mean, not that the 14 points would not be valid due to that, because then a Marxist could be considered to be fascist under the 14 points.
How
And
so?
well, if they were considered to be left-leaning, then it wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense to call someone who's all like progressive like that a fascist.
That they literally the essay literally says that one of these points doesn't make you a fascist. It just makes you more susceptible to fascism. If someone's left leaning on most issues, but they hate women and they're big time sexist, that the point, the literal that we went over this sentence at the like earlier, but it is enough that one of them may be present to allow fascism to coagulate around it. This doesn't mean that if you agree with one of these things, you're a fascist or you will be a fascist. It means you are more likely to fall into fascism or be supportive of a fascist. If you're super sexist, you're more likely to eventually, at some point, agree with a lot of other things in this list, or even just be okay, or even supportive of someone who agrees with all these things coming into power.
Perhaps, maybe I could be taking an L here, but I've been playing on I've been playing on the offensive in this debate, so I guess I'll play on the defensive now. So what I was going to recommend was that rather than try and create this composite version of fascism, that we don't group fascism into one big blob, and we so earlier on in the Echoes in the essay, Umberto Eco uses an example, the 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, B, C, D, C, D, E, D, E, F. Do you know the part that I'm talking about? Where he says that certain types of fascism contradict each other?
Well, all fascism contradicts itself. Fascism is an incoherent ideology.
If you were to create a composite version of it, where you combine all fascisms together,
Well, I
like
mean, I get. So the problem is this list takes into account everything from Italian, like Mussolini age fascism, to, Nazi Germany a kind of fascism, to even
and that's
American modern day fascism.
and that's the problem.
No, it's not, because if you just have a solid here is the definition of fascism. If you look up fascism definition on Google, fascism is a form of far-right authoritarian ultra-nationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society and of the economy, which came to prominence in early 20th century Europe. If you went off this definition, you could probably fit the contemporary Republican Party in here. That's the problem. A single sentence or a small paragraph definition of fascism is so broad and so useless, essentially. You could fit the entire Republican Party in there. And while I think the Republican Party today does fit a lot of these points,
Can I
I don't
stop you
know if I
there?
would call it outright fascist. That's why it's good to have a list of points, like a checklist.
I agree with you. The term fascism is too vague. We gotta separate fascism into
No, the term fascism isn't too vague. We just need to apply the word fascism accurately.
But Umberto Eco himself, well, Umberto, I want to talk about the ideology of the.
So here, you came on to discuss whether or not Trump's a fascist, and you said that I've been on the defensive the entire time. How about I go on the offensive and we talk about how
Yeah.
Trump is a fascist? We can go through the points, and I bet I could probably find an example,
No, no,
multiple
no. I
examples
agree
even,
that.
of Trump being a fascist on basically every point here.
No, I agree that Trump would apply to the 14 points. I'm not denying that.
Or the 14 points would apply to Trump.
I mean, the 14 points apply to Trump. I would not deny that. However, Well, I mean, we had that gridlock with the sexism. We had that gridlock, so we can't really necessarily go forward with that. I'm just
So
explaining like,
do you
my
have like
point.
any other? Because like clearly we're not really getting anywhere. Do you have like any other like what's your bring out your strongest like point?
So what I was planning on doing was saying that different forms of fascism should be separated, and we should look at each for like if so let's say that we wanted to say, I think we should look at one particular type of fascism and see if that applies to Trump, then take another form of fascism and see if that applies to Trump. So we go on the different types of fascism, like we got Mussolini's fascism. We
Okay,
got
so what you're looking for is a more accurate or a more precise definition of what Trump believes. So I would say Trump is probably a white nationalist. If I were to give like a more pinpointed, concise definition for Trump, Trump is probably a white nationalist. White nationalists are all fascists, but not all fascists are white nationalists. I think it's a good way to describe it. Fascism is an umbrella that encompasses many ideologies. It's like jacuzzis. Jacuzzi's a brand. All jacuzzis are hot tubs. Not all hot tubs are jacuzzis. So hot tubs would be fascism in this example, and white nationalism would be jacuzzi, the brand. So I would say Trump is a white nationalist, which is a
if you
fascist, which is why I refer to Trump as a fascist.
if you were to point at a particular type of fascism and put Trump under that umbrella, which type of fascism would you choose?
What do you mean type of fascism? List them. Can I have like a multiple choice here?
Like mid 30s Italian fascism. We got
Probably
what
not
was
that.
his name? Uh, I guess I'm not too familiar with him, but Umberto Eco lists Ezra Pound. We got what was it? What was the name of that one guy? Evola, Franco.
I don't think the types of fascism these figures exercised is very much like modern day U.S. fascism. Fascism pops up its head looking very different in every part of the world at different times in history. That's why there's a list of points to go over to compare. These are all consistent with all these types of fascism. Mussolini's Italian fascism, Hitler's Germany, every type of fascism that's ever popped up, every regime that's shown its ugly head, even the type of fascism practiced by like those Black Hammer types, even they apply to these things here. They believe that like colonized people, that this land belongs to these colonized people, and everyone else that's on it that isn't them needs to go because this is their land, and that white people are bad because they're destroying their culture and all and yada yada yada. No matter who you are, even they have their own type of fascism that they agree with, but they all agree with the same types, the same points. Most of these points apply to all of them, and that's why the list is important. That's why the list is good, because you've got a list of points that no matter how fascism tries to rebrand itself and make itself look different to fool the population into agreeing with it, because fascism is always extremely populist and tries to pull the support of the people at start to gain power, people will always be able to recognize it if they know the common points that fascism always touches on. That way, it can never hide itself through dog whistles and euphemisms, which is very important. Fascism's biggest thing it has on its side is being able to hide itself before it's too late.
Oh,
Or I should say disguise itself, not hide itself.
maybe I will come back. Maybe I'll look at more examples of various examples that could fit into the 14 points that would be may or may not be considered fascist. Maybe I'll look at more examples, but I guess now's a good time to stop. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, we've probably gone over everything that there is to go over at the moment, but hey, I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. It was good conversation.
Yeah, I had a fun time. You're okay with this going up as a video on YouTube, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay, cool. So, all right. Well, have a good day. All right, we're doing a watch party of the new episode of Loki tonight. If you are watching that show, and you'll be able to join Xander's Theater tonight at midnight PST, where I'll be live streaming it from my screen, so you don't have to have Disney Plus or whatever. You'll be able to watch it like from, because I'll be streaming it on Discord. It'll be a good time. Okay, so I hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Alrighty, have a good one. Okay,
Bye.
bye. That debate went in quite a few circles, but I'm still glad I had it because I feel like a lot of people might benefit from having, what is fascism and how does it work and how does it rear its ugly head in different points in history in different places. Just have that, clarified for them a bit more. So that was fun. Jojo Mojo, thank you for the $5. Says Tim wants to be Joe Rogan so bad. True. I think every right-wing person kind of wants to be. And Neurobash FM, thank you for the Prime sub. I appreciate that. Very kind. We're kind of lacking on donos today a little bit. We're at $40. I'd hope to at least be able to hit 100 today. All right. Okay. Oh wait, is the Steam Summer Sale still happening? Does anyone know if the Steam Summer Sale Steam Summer Sale is still happening? Yeah? Fuck. Okay, well, that explains it. That explains why income's so bad. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon, everything down below. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Discord, all of that, and comment. Leave a comment on the video. What did you think of that debate? Do you think I did well? Do you think I did badly? Rate my performance 1 out of 10. I would appreciate it because I'm trying to practice more debates and get better so I can debate some more high-profile, more practiced debate opponents in the future. Anyway, it lasts till July 8th. Good Lord, I'm going to be homeless. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching today. It's been fun. And, support me financially if you can afford to. Donate, subscribe, all the things. And I'll see you all next video.